the child goes to the teacher who will guide that child.
What do you mean by external moral authority? You use that expression a lot.
Materialism has to do with when you are
Hello everyone, it's great to have all of you back for this course entitled The Course in Values and Spirituality. Today we are going to be looking at page 92 of book number 1, which will be the introduction to the second part of what is contained in unit number 3. So Sister Denise is here with me in the studio today. It's great to have you back.
Thank you.
So Sister Denise, by way of introduction, you start on page 92 with the following words: no educational institution can exist without values. Imparting values to students of all ages through the content and materials of study, as well as through the routines and presumptions of school policies and programs. I was very curious, is this what the aim is, or is this reality?
Definitely this is the reality, but the question is which values? So people sometimes think that an educational institution is neutral, but every single thing about it, the building, the attitudes of the teachers, the curriculum, everything is stacked with particular values. And I think it's important for us to discern exactly what values are being conveyed, because what we're dealing with is not whether there are values or whether there aren't values. What we're dealing with is that there is a clash of values going on, and then which values do we want to promote and why. And what we're also seeing in this course is that there's a shift that is going on and that needs to go on between archaic values, patriarchal, towards values that are based in human rights, spiritual principles, and ideas.
Sorry, I want to interrupt you there. Could you give the viewer an example of what you mean by archaic values, and one based on the second category of falling under the category of human rights? I think there's confusion about the two.
Well, archaic values look at human beings in a hierarchical way, that males are more important than females, and then the whole value system is stacked against females. Whereas the values that are more connected with the Constitution of India and democratic attitudes place males and females in a more equitable position. It's not come all the way to complete equality, because men and women are different, but unfairly penalizing girls is belonging to the archaic values. In the process of the emancipation of women, it was thought that, okay, make men and women equal in the sense of much more identical. That is not successful, because men and women are different biologically, psychologically, socially, in many, many ways, but it's the unfair stacking against women that we need to take care of.
Paragraph 2 caught my attention. It reads, education in India has served the different dominant authorities of the day. These influences include Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, British colonialism, intellectuals seeking national integration, and historians asserting an ideological perspective. How does what you say there fit into what it is that you're trying to impart to our students and viewers?
Well, in this sentence we're looking at the dominant authorities of the day and how they influence educational policy, curriculum, and so on. Now we have to look at today. And you see a policy that says boys are intellectually superior to girls. Well, that's not actually true. Boys learn differently from girls. Girls tend to be more good at a holistic view. They're better at multitasking. Boys tend to be more focused. And the society, the structure of business and so on has been a little bit more military in the past. And now it's shifting away from that to something a little bit more holistic. And holistic lifestyles tend to be more healthy. The thing that is tricky is to create a sense of the complementarity of males and females as opposed to superiority, inferiority. And so that has gone through the process of, say, make males and females equal in an impractical way. And now we're looking at how to make it complementary. You see, women are not less artistic, not less intellectually capable, but the society will actually very often force girls out of the education system so that they can go and get married. And because of that, the educators don't give girls that much attention because they say, well, you know, you're not going to pursue it anyway because you're going to have to get married. So education for girls is looked at as a luxury. But when the marriage breaks down, which it very often does, then the girl needs to be able to fend for herself in the workplace. So she needs the best education possible. So attitudes about the necessity for education in girls, that needs to change. And then how to set the curriculum to bear in mind a more feminine way of understanding things. And there are also boys who do well in a more holistic educational setting. So people's view about, you know, boys and girls have been very stereotyped, which means that anyone who doesn't fit in those stereotypes is penalized. And so that's very short-sighted. Yes, India is a multi-ethnic society, but it's also very hierarchical. And at the moment, it's shifting towards more Hindu nationalism. So then education is going to skew the education system more in that direction, because who sets the curriculum is always the government. And the government wants the people to grow up thinking and feeling about the country in the way that they want them to. But then there are people who say that your education really shouldn't be so connected with that kind of social propaganda, because ultimately it doesn't create a healthy country when that is done. So we're looking at all of these influences, and now we're seeing, okay, the influence that is very healthy is the influence of pure spirituality, which covers the different ethnicities, the different religions. It's a core.
In the next paragraph, you take up the advancement of science and technology in the 21st century, and you go on to say that India is making a mark on the world through her information technology brain power. You end up that paragraph on a thought-provoking note. It reads, many bright and talented cyber engineers emerging from India's technical colleges are giving India a fresh identity. Yet this materially based, technologically progressive identity is blamed for much of the erosion of human and universal values. Is the blame laid at the door of advancements in science and technology?
I think the perception when India initially became very excellent in science and technology, especially in information technology, meant that people all of a sudden had a lot more money than they knew what to do with. And so they went right into buying all kinds of things and very materialistic and so on. But I think subsequently that has shifted. And the shift is like this. People who could take advantage of very high-end education and travel abroad and work in United States and Europe, these technically bright individuals got exposure to an international culture, which means they also got exposure to another value system.
Mm-hmm.
And in India, there is a bit of a prejudice about the West, saying that, well, India is very spiritual and the West is very materialistic. But when you look at it more closely, you find that the materialism of India is very much there, and it's applied a little differently from how it is in the West, although now more and more you're getting an international type of materialism. But together with that, there's a development of culture and a development of values where you see a lot more equilibrium between men and women. Some of these old social attitudes or ancient social attitudes are absolutely not espoused by this new demographic group of highly educated Indians. And so that is really bringing in a new, a kind of new culture into India. And people are moving in and out of India very freely, whereas previously the movement was a lot more restricted. So the landscape is really changed.
As I listened to your answer, the word globalization appeared on the screen of my mind. That would have affected India's identity as well, didn't it?
Absolutely. And if you also think about it, the Indian diaspora in Europe, Australia, United States, South America, I mean, all over the world, there are huge gatherings of people with an Indian cultural background, but who are really integrating more and more into this international sense of self. And yes, globalization has had an enormous effect. And you have this large group of people who are interested in spiritual values, human rights, democratic ways of running society, and sort of the old ways of India are fading, actually, in comparison to this new thing that's coming through.
In the last paragraph, you say the following: if there were a connection between technological growth and values development, we should see a significant increase in the practice of values in this country. This is not the case, however. The note on which you end this is also quite noteworthy. Egotism, anger, violence, the dumbing down of knowledge, etc. are escalating. Today's education encourages a competitive spirit at the cost of a person's holistic development. Take us through what you meant by that, step by step, please.
Bear in mind that these sentences come from 16 years in the past from now. And in the in-between period of time, we've got practically a new generation of young people who have come into higher education, into the workforce. These are the new married couples. They're thinking about putting their children in school. And these people are much influenced by globalization, and they're very interested in values. It's not the same as the previous generation who just were dealing with this brand new amount of money that was suddenly available. Now you're finding that there is an interest in holistic development, and they want to be well read, and they see the internationally good quality films, literature, and the arts and so on. So I see that we're actually moving forward in a very positive direction from what we were 16 to 20 years ago. Yeah.
What direction are you referring to?
That science and technology do not assume the removal of values, but values which are corresponding to liberal policies, emancipation of women, the rights of the child, the right to know, the right to be curious, not limiting oneself to one culture in opposition to another culture. I mean, things are really much more fluid than they were, and that science has not actually taken people away from spiritual values, but it has actually, I think now, recently, created a greater interest in it. So we've moved away from this position.
You start off on page 93 with the following question as a title: is education for work or knowledge? What made you ask this question?
I asked this question because it's a question that the older generation come up with all the time. And they are saying, you know, we need to be educated culturally, and all these young people are getting a technical education, and so it's causing the cultural aspects to be set aside, and the philosophical, the concerns with spiritual values to be set aside, and pushing people off into materialism. But as I was mentioning earlier, I think that phase is past, and people are looking at education in a more holistic way. They want qualifications for work, but they're not satisfied with that. They want to have a rounded, good quality personality. They want a background in the arts and culture and politics, sociology, and so on. And so this demand is actually causing the educational institutions to have to provide courses that are not just arts or sciences. People want something much more holistic, and they are not accepting the old format of you're either technical or you're artistic. You're either there for work or for more of a dilettante type of approach to life. No. They want to be well trained, well skilled in technology, and they want to understand the quality of human life, which contains all of these spiritually based values.
You start off this paragraph on a somewhat controversial note. You use the words, education in India today is on the horns of a dilemma. Is that still the case, 16 years after you wrote this?
I think that people have started to resolve this, and that this position of either it's for work or for knowledge, that's no longer the situation. Maybe in some underdeveloped educational institutions, but the ones that are really the leaders are not. They're really integrating this because the students, the market, is saying, no, we want to be well informed in all these areas, and we want courses that are integrated. We don't want to be just in one section or another section. Don't treat us like this, you see.
In paragraph 2, you go on to say that there has been a gradual shift from the traditional concept of education based on morality, culture and civilization to the development-based utilitarian theory of education. That has caught my attention.
I think that, okay, they shifted from one to the other, but now I think they're shifting further.
Towards what?
Towards a balanced education which contains both sides. In this last period, everyone has a computer, laptop, device. Everyone has access to the world, which they didn't have before. And they have easy access. People are curious, and they're building themselves much faster than the education system can catch up with. And so this is also having an effect on the education system, that they're demanding that the education system catch up and become modern, and now the schools are all equipped with computers, internet. Even the subjects that are studied are different than they were in previous times. So we're looking at an epochal change, or maybe several epochal changes, and education has to catch up with not only technology but with people's concern about human society, people's concern about climate change, the environment, the social attitudes and so on. The young people are much more aware than they ever were before, because they have immediate access to information about what's happening all over the world and through the social media, you see.
I really like the way that you ended paragraph 2. It reads as follows: education's primary function is to generate and disseminate knowledge, but it must also promote know-how and communication skills that prepare young people to thrive in a highly competitive, demanding and changing world. In order to bridge the gap, we need to combine the utilitarian pursuit of education with spiritual, cultural and aesthetic values. This kind of brings what you were just saying with how you started this book, as far as the description of the values are concerned. So you bring this together very beautifully.
Thank you.
Okay, so could you elaborate on this? I'm sure the viewers would want the story behind the story.
I think what a person looking at this at the moment needs to think about is looking at this enormous smorgasbord of what's possible. You have to create your own curriculum, and I think the educational...
That is so lovely. You have to create your own curriculum for yourself.
Yeah, because the limitations and restrictive courses that were available are not acceptable to the student population now, and people want to do mathematics and film, and they want to do environmental studies and psychology and things that the traditional educational institutions say, well, those things don't mix, therefore you're not allowed to mix them. And now people are saying, we don't care whether you think they mix or not, I want this.
What comes to mind is that when it comes to education, we rely on people who are older than us. We rely on religious authorities, in some cases spiritual authorities, educational authorities. We rely on the people, on institutions and people whom we trust to impart knowledge.
Well, that's changing.
So are you saying that people should now be more self-reliant and self-educate rather than rely on someone else?
Well, it's not about should, it's that the new generation is very self-conscious and aware of their power and their intelligence and their value, which is new. And they are saying, this is me, these are my talents, and this is the kind of training that I want to develop myself with. And they are much more in the position of saying, I know who I am, and they're not relying on, young people are not thinking of themselves as a blank piece of paper that the previous generation needs to write on. Young people are saying, we went past you a long time ago. Now we are being proactive, we are deciding what we're going to do. And you see the same thing in the workplace. They're not looking for a job, they're creating their own job and offering their services. They're not going for a lifelong career with one employer. They're skipping, chopping and changing and creating contracts, and the whole thing is absolutely different from what it was even 20 years ago.
Well, thank you. I really loved how she used the expression, you need to create your own curriculum as far as values are concerned, in other aspects as well, but for the purposes of this course, as far as your values are concerned. And that, to me, brings back the power back into your own hands. You do not give your power away to anyone else. It's a very powerful way and a refreshingly new way of looking at how to be. And in that way, you can create a value system that's entirely your own, with your own signature on it. So, Sister Denise, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been such a lovely time for me to be able to be part of this learning process, and I do hope that you find something in today's course that was of some value to you. Take care and goodbye.